capacity needs to be ever expanding in order for our nonprofits to meet the needs that are ever evolving in our communities. We saw that when COVID hit, when food banks were being asked to double and triple who they were serving. 42% of Sacramento County residents are asset poor, which means they have fewer than 90 days of liquid assets in the event of a catastrophe, an illness, a job loss. We have so many of us living on the margin. And if we want to do something about that, we have to fundamentally change how we approach those issues.
Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our founding partners for their foresight in helping us transform the way conversations start. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations creating integrated communications committed to improving lives. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. From foster care to public radio, my guest today has helped nonprofits develop programs, attract funding, and expand the delivery of their mission. She is currently the executive director of the Impact Foundry in partnership with an engaged board and stellar staff team. In 2006, she joined Threefold Communications in Sacramento to launch the nonprofit division, focused on capacity building for faith and community-based organizations and serving the interests of corporate community benefit programs. Local, statewide, and national foundations engaged the firm for the multitude of assets they provided in helping nonprofits improve upon and demonstrate their impact. In 2015, Threefold sponsored her to assume the helm at Nonprofit Resource Center and to lead its expansion and transformation to the Impact Foundry. She is now having the time of her life creating new pathways of impact within the nonprofit sector in her current role, focused on strengthening the capacity and influence of nonprofit organizations or social profits that work tirelessly to save and change lives, improve our economy, our environment, and provide a full spectrum of opportunity for today's and tomorrow's leaders. She believes our future depends on well-equipped, engaged youth, and for that reason serves on multiple boards, consults to many nonprofit leaders, and has received numerous awards of recognition, including one of our region's most admired CEOs by the Sacramento Business Journal. She hails from Alaska, where she grew up playing with bears and catching salmon barehanded, and most of the time she tells the truth. I'm excited to be speaking with a dear friend and someone I consider a mentor. Kim Tucker, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you. Thank you. About time.
Yeah, I know it's been a while. I've been trying to get you over here for some time. First off, I love the name Impact Foundry. It has this solid, heavy feel of something that is causing things to change. And I think in a way that really is what it is.
Yeah, I think the board back in 2016 went through a process of being more than what the Nonprofit Resource Center naming suggested, right? That we don't serve just nonprofits. And that, this sustainable community change requires all our sectors. So this old-fashioned, younger people today don't always get it, but the Foundry model, right? That you pour in all these otherwise different things and what comes out is stronger than what went in individually. That's the Foundry portion of it. And then for us, it's business, government, philanthropy, and nonprofits. They don't get to work in a silo.
We're going to talk a lot about that because that's so critical in the collective nonprofit space that, organizations may be vertical solo, but you can't operate that way. And before we get there, I think, let's talk a little bit about nonprofit business, nonprofits as business, because people tend to look at them differently from the outside in. Those of us who have been inside and understand the working, it's a business. And in many cases, it's a big business. It's a huge business. Some of these organizations are talking $10, $12 million. Some of our biggest are $30, $40 million. That's a lot of money. And again, some of the outside in perspective, it's seen, well, that's a nonprofit. That has to be run differently. Mm-hmm. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, there's a couple things come to mind about that. In terms of business in California, every nonprofit that has an employee follows the same laws of EDD that you would here at your firm or any big business would, right? So we're subject to the same rules around the safety of workers and the legal mandates, right, around mm-hmm. business. So right there, we have to meet a test that's related to business. I think the other side of it is historically we looked at nonprofits as the place for your spare change to park, right? We say, well, we'll give you some extra resources to do a good thing in our community. And probably when I started in this business, we averaged as a sector about 80% contributed and 20% earned in our revenue models. So those would be the primary two ways an organization gets funds, right? So and earned is you sign a contract.
So I was going to ask you to explain.
Yeah, you have a contract or a particular type of program grant where you do exactly what the terms are to receive those funds. That's mm-hmm. earned revenue, right? Contributed is when people donate to you, right? And that's the most classic definition. So the donated dollars are very flexible usually. And the nonprofit can expand and contract based on how much it has. And over this last generation, nonprofits have gone from about an 80-20 contributed and earned model, business model, mm-hmm. to the exact opposite, where we're over 80% earned and 20% donated, right? So the way nonprofits have been funded has changed. That's going to call on us to have a different way of doing business, right? If the majority of the funds that come through our doors are earned revenue contracts and agreements, then we must have the infrastructure to properly account for them, to properly deliver on what we promise. And that's a business model. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not like my favorite job is the one that pays you. You don't have to show up for it, right? That's great, right? Send the money and bless us with whatever you have and we'll do something with it. Nonprofits don't run like that anymore. Mm-hmm. They really don't.
So they look like a business. It's a business that provides a service. It's a fee for service, and therein lies the revenue for the organization, mm-hmm. with a small percentage that comes from other sources, be it donation, community-wide, and or grants, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. You probably don't want to get me mad in the first few minutes of this interview.
Well, I have a place where I think I will.
Yeah, that's good. Well, but what starts to wind me up about that, too, is that yeah, that all sounds great, right? We'll let you operate a little bit more like a business without necessarily providing you the respect and the resources and the opportunities to invest in your infrastructure as a business, right? Mm-hmm. There is a way for us to better the way we tell it, of course. Nonprofits, we all know we need to do a better job. But when my donor or my grant funder or my government agency who contracts with us expects a certain type of accountability, I must have an infrastructure for that accountability, right? I need an accounting system. I might need a CFO. I might mm-hmm. need talent and tools to be the business that is expected of me when historically that was never an allowable expense for us, right?
Because we're looking at that margin.
Correct.
How much goes to the cause, 98, 99%.
Ridiculous, yes.
1% goes back to the business operation.
That's right. And if you want to invest...
Which looks nothing like a business, because if you ran a business like that,
right,
it'd be saying, what's wrong with you?
That's right.
You're not reinvesting back in your business.
Yeah. Will you be here tomorrow for the next catastrophe that the government is calling upon you to help with right now?
Not at 1%.
Not at 1%. I think in professional services, it's about a 51% indirect rate for your lawyers and accountants and insurance brokers. By the way, all vendors we have mm-hmm. and have to pay for.
Same as a for-profit business.
Correct. We still have to file our tax returns. We still pay a significant amount of taxes. Ours show up mostly as payroll taxes. But when you employ 2 million people in the state of California, you pay a little bit of money, right? So we need an accounting system to support that. We need on-demand tools so that our donors get the answers they want when they want to know how we spent their funds. They're owed that information, but we're also owed the opportunity to actually have a system for it, right? So if professional services starts at around 51% and maybe a retail store starts at maybe a low of 25% indirect costs, why are we pummeling nonprofits to stay within 10%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a different word that donors like to use that's called overhead. I don't know what that is. I think it's a made-up word. I don't think it's an accounting word. No accounting class I took had that word in it. Indirect costs, sure, right? That's fair. We have indirect costs just like any business would, just like any family would have.
Mm-hmm.
And if what you think a nonprofit is to have no money in the bank at the end of the year, then we are not being very prepared for the next time you need us to show up for that flood, that fire, that childcare crisis, whatever it is. So we have to develop retained earnings, right? We need money in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Being nonprofit does not mean that we're in the red all the time. The outcome is often we are, right? Because we haven't made sufficient investments in our indirect costs.
And sometimes that's because the leadership of the organization wasn't really a business person to begin with.
Correct.
They may have been in it for the cause and the purpose and the passion of the mission of the nonprofit, but didn't really understand the business side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get there into some of the operational elements, what is it that the Impact Foundry provides for our nonprofit organizations as well as the community?
Well, we couch all of our work or screen all of our work possibilities through the concept of capacity building.
And explain it for those who maybe aren't familiar.
Yeah, we want to help build the capacity of those who serve in our communities, right? So
Thank you.
At the individual level, that would be professional development. At the organizational level, that would be increased capacity to either more efficiently deliver what you deliver or to expand or deepen what you deliver in the community. That's what capacity building means, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would think at any time an organization, including my own, can ask this question. Are we ego-driven or mission-driven? If I were to step away from Impact Foundry, would it survive? If it would not, then we are an ego-centric, ego-mission organization, and that's not what we want to be. And many of our best caretakers of our community are ego-driven and ego-centric organizations. That's not an
It's not to say it's a bad thing.
No,
right.
It's just what it is, right? Someone with a huge commitment who was impacted deeply by something in their community has said, and we're so proud to align with those kind of people, has said, I don't want this to continue. I don't want more kids to die in my neighborhood. I'm going to do something about it, right? I don't want the bad air quality in my neighborhood. I'm going to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the issue is, they stood up and said, I'll do something about it. Those people end up with organizations often that continue to be wildly under-resourced, and that key person is pulling it along, right? And what we want to do is help convert those passion projects into viable, fully legal, indemnified organizations that enjoy the public's trust.
Mm-hmm.
That would be our success metric.
Which is a great lead into sustainability. That organization we want to live on, you know, for its good that it provides. And one of the programs that you've got, one of your core programs, is Certified Sustainable.
Yes. And for us, that's like a mini MBA program for nonprofits, right? So if we look at the latest research, and this is a continually evolving program, so we do maintain a good lit review of things and studies that are happening. But the options within an organization to focus, right? We tend to focus on our stakeholder, whoever it is we're serving, right? But that takes behind that a structure, right, in order to be effective and sustained. So for us, it's revenue. It's operational infrastructure. How do you deploy the assets that you have in the most efficient and effective ways? How do you prove the efficacy of your work? The community engagement side, which does include how you communicate, how you sell, market, fundraise, reputation management, all of those things. How do you partner effectively in a world that really is not meant for you to go alone?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what does that look like? And then finally, the issues of governance, right? So we've borrowed clumsily from the corporate structure in America, and we have a community-based board, apparently. right? A lot of us don't do a good job at it. But it's beautiful when members in the community want to step up and serve in that way. They can provide the oversight. They can be a thought partner with staff leadership. They can be great fiscal stewards and great brand ambassadors for it too. Because that is the one deficit we chronically live with is that, and I don't know how we change this necessarily, we certainly try. It seems like it's not cool to market if you're a nonprofit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're supposed to just be here to receive the goodness people have. We would like to prompt some of that goodness,
right.
And we couch it in outreach and community engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult. We very seldom receive funding that supports marketing.
One part of that gets back to the perception of the nonprofit and its expense and what percentage is going, again, to the cause. Well, if you're going to spend X amount of dollars marketing, well, then you can't give more to the cause, of course.
Which is kind of twisted, right? Because if I don't
Totally
create
agree.
the pipeline for you to enter into what we offer, then that's a life that I have not had the opportunity to save or change.
Right.
So to me, marketing is a program cost, right?
And before we get too deep into that Certified Sustainable is a program. It's a program that you provide to nonprofits. Could be somebody new getting into a startup and or an existing nonprofit that needs the education, the training. They realize we don't have enough.
Yes, and it could start to answer those questions from the ego to mission-centric maturation that you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
The founder, doesn't necessarily going to be there forever or something like that. But it is, to graduate from the program and to be, sort of get that good housekeeping stamp of approval as sustainable, you need to complete a multi-year plan for your organization. So it's 4 months of classwork followed by 3 months of plan development with individualized technical assistance. And then, probably 8 months in, a big graduation party for that cohort, right?
And how long is the program?
Well, that's about what it comes down to. If we start in January, you'll graduate in August.
Okay. So it's a commitment.
It's a commitment. It's probably at least, I'd say, a minimum of 10 hours a month in the first 4 months just to receive the curriculum, work through, do the homework, show up, support the cohort members that are in your class. We try to do it in an average of around 20 organizations at a time. We have goals for that in addition to just the peer-to-peer learning that's possible. We really want to see collaboration come out of these. We do believe that too many of us are trying to do it alone, and we could be more effective if we did it together.
Yeah, and there's that word collaboration again.
Yes, definitely.
You have another program, also one of the core programs, I think it's relatively new, cultural intelligence.
Yes.
Tell us what that one is.
Well, with some creative staff that have since retired, but I'll still give them credit for the naming. Cultural intelligence unit.
I love the name because it sounds like a Secret Service.
Exactly.
It's something special.
Picture a Marvel character, right? I think everyone around the cultural intelligence unit feels a bit like a superhero trying to do something important and saving of our community. It started out a few years prior, thanks in large part to funding from Kaiser Permanente, to investigate the models in various communities for racial justice, right? How do we ensure not only those organizations that focus on issues of race and equity and inclusion are sufficiently funded and supported, that they're able to access supports as they need? Can we get different disparate communities to talk and work together kind of thing? So we determined that more cultural intelligence was needed, right? We need to learn more about each other. We are disproportionately white-led in this community right now. We need more communities of color represented in 2 key areas. One, on boards of directors of nonprofits, and second, as leadership staff, right? I think a survey I saw a few years back now is, on average, about 65% of those working in nonprofits come from ethnically and culturally diverse backgrounds, but only 14% are in leadership. I don't like that.
I wonder what the boards look like.
It's
probably less.
Right. I think according to the Giving Edge platform maintained by our community foundation, it's more than 85% white. And I don't want to disparage anyone who identifies as white, who has taken the time and effort to step up and be in those roles. I'm asking them to expand their vision a little bit and look beyond the people right next to them that look just like them and look for communities of color to represent on those boards as well.
And it's a challenge. I know I'm on several boards, have been on boards, and we would look around and say, there's nobody here on our board that looks like our constituents for the organization.
That's right. Because we have systemically perpetuated a racist structure, frankly, that when we keep doing what we've been doing, we just get more of that, right? And at some point, I trust that an awakening is happening, and with that awakening comes a sense of responsibility to do something about it.
Right.
Right. In the past, we've lovingly tapped our friends, and for many of us, our friends look just like us.
Right.
So the first work to do individually is for us to make some new friends, right, and to really make an effort and do it with humility, do it with an effort to learn. Right. And those of us who identify as white have really held every advantage. And if we want that to change, then we need to be able to give up some of that advantage. That's hard for people.
Oh, understood. Nobody wants to give anything up.
They don't.
Not to mention change.
That's right. But if we don't at least make the pie bigger,
right,
and you can keep your same slice, but there's more to go around, it won't change.
Right.
And that's not a sustainable thought either.
Other programs. Those are your big programs. And these programs, not so much the certified sustainable, but the cultural intelligence really is available to the community at large. Anybody that wants to exercise.
That's right. Yeah, and some of the ongoing training that we provide, whether it's helping people learn how to write grants or search for grants or how to serve on a board, right? We do a fair amount of that. We have great partnerships in the business community for employers to bring us in to help their emerging leaders or director level staff learn how to represent their business interests at the same time that they represent things they're passionate about on community boards. We need well-informed, good-minded people to do that. I really appreciate Tykert Construction, for example. They have an entire training center, and they welcome me in there to work with their staff. And it's also a safe place to ask questions about what success could look like in serving on a board. But it's also then bringing back to the boards they sit on some of these free resources that we offer, right? So we see it as very circular in that sense.
That's amazing that they actually have that within the organization.
They do, with a commitment to that.
Yeah.
Others do too. Financial services is very good about that too.
When we see, and those are the people we see prevalent in supporting a lot of our nonprofits in the community. You are a resource center, and certainly for nonprofits, but are you equally as well a resource center for businesses that are not nonprofit?
Yes, and I think this is that interesting, like from 1989 when the Austin attorneys, along with the Sac Region Community Foundation and Junior League, said we need something for nonprofits, right? And this was established on the third floor of the public library, and a library sciences woman sat there and answered your questions, right? That's how it started, and then it just
I didn't know that.
Matured from there, right? We have those really important organizations to thank for the creation of it initially. And then it moved from there. It grew, luckily, and took on different components. The Resource Center, at the time that I took over, was struggling, but it had been a drop-in center. So it had its own space at Sierra Health Foundation, 900 dusty books on the wall. But we would subscribe to the foundation directory online, and you could drop in, and without having to pay to search then, we would provide you some staff support. You could search for grants. And it was a little bit limited to that for a long time. COVID certainly switched a lot of that up. People want things on demand where they're sitting, not to have to travel to something, right? We do still have a lot of people drop in. We don't continue to subscribe to the foundation directory online, mostly because of COVID. It wasn't possible to come in.
Right.
And so that was a fee that we needed to eliminate. Instead, we've done some good partnerships with resources, right? So when you join Impact Foundry, you have an opportunity to subscribe to GrantStation, which is a digital platform to search for grants at a reduced rate than you might pay if you didn't join, right? Similarly, we've partnered with training programs that if you want to take them online at your own pace, MindEdge is a partner of ours, and you can subscribe at a discount to their programs on our website. And then we offer things in person and via Zoom. We're actually migrating a little bit away from Zoom. We're done with the hybrid. I think all of us are completely annoyed by the word pivot and hybrid, right? Like we don't want to do either of those things anymore thanks to COVID. So we're putting more in-person classes together now.
What are you finding?
It's interesting. We're going to experiment with something that we announced a couple weeks ago at our big mixer. We formed some professional cohorts. Many, many years ago, we had what was called ED Bootcamp and CEO Link, which were kind of like baby and adult versions of support groups that they put together. We've reconstituted them around issues for EDs or executive directors and CEOs of nonprofits. So these will all launch in September, and registration will open June 1 for these things. We have people now in the DEI space, right? A chief diversity officer. That could be at a bank, a hospital, could be at a nonprofit. But we know that the data about those careers is fraught, right? Average 18 months in the job, under-resourced, right?
I mean, think about 3 years ago. What is that? Doing
right.
DEI? That's a role? That's a position?
That's right.
We thought it was a thing.
Mm-hmm. And so similar to fund developers in our industry, they tend to be under-supported inside the organizational structure. And it's unclear what success is, right? So we'd like to bring more of them together in a resource and support group atmosphere, providing services, actual resources for them to fulfill whatever their job's mandate is around engagement with employees, right, on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And at the same time, support what is a really lonely job inside these organizations because they don't tend to have a big team. It tends to just be them. So how do you go to work every day and feel inspired?
Right.
We have some of those coming online in the fall.
Outstanding. The reality of nonprofit leadership has been, as we spoke a little bit earlier, the purpose of the person who's the leader. You know, the executive director, the CEO may be egocentric, but not necessarily. The organization could have pre-existed, and now it's sustaining itself and it moves on. But we tend to look at that as, well, we can't pay them competitively. It's a nonprofit.
Yeah, isn't that BS?
Yeah. Well, this is where I'm letting you go there.
Right.
I want you to go there
because
because...
I'd say this to everyone who works in a nonprofit. I don't know about you, but I did not take a vow of poverty to do good in this world.
Right.
I think that you see memes of a political nature or social nature sometimes about the difference that school teachers make compared to, you know, heads of defense companies or whatever the point they're trying to make. The bottom line is, where do our values sit, right? And if we value kids being able to read before they graduate from high school, then we ought to invest in the people that will see that happens, right?
Right.
And that can include community-based organizations that are trying to support parents that are trying to cover 3 jobs and raise their family and keep their housing. So there's lots of ways into that issue just on the reading literacy front, right? Which is a personal passion of mine because I agree with the Sacramento Literacy Foundation. And when April says that reading is democracy and you can't participate if you can't read,
right.
I think we should take that seriously, right? Similarly, I think childcare is an entire industry of issues relating to people returning to work from COVID, to seeing that families on the margins have the opportunity to get jobs. Whether you're a hand up or hand out perspective on the politics of government support, it hits. It's a red, white, and blue issue, right? If domestic violence is one of the key leading indicators of absenteeism in the job, that's hurting employers. So as employers, whether you care socially or through your faith or through some other means, care about the bottom line of your business and see that the investment is important, right? So meanwhile, why would you relegate all these important topics to the least paid, no retirement plan employee, right? Like, that's terrible. I feel like we're upside down when it comes to, if you look at our economic structure and where are we putting our resources.
When it gets back to, we mentioned marketing. You know, how do you market the organization that's doing so much good in the community to perpetuate the good?
That's right.
If you don't have a budget to market it, you can't tell people about the story and you can't cause more good to happen.
Yes. One of the most frequently stated, and there are a few, and we can joke about all of them at some point, but one of the most frequently stated things I hear from nonprofits is, we're the best kept secret in town.
Right.
Best kept secret, really. okay, let's see, you're community owned for the benefit of the community, and the community has no idea you're here. What the hell are you doing?
Right.
Like, if we took it, I mean, in the Aramaic language of Christ's time, a sin was an archery term that meant you missed the mark. Well, you are entirely sinning.
Yes.
If you're the best kept secret in town.
Yeah.
Isn't
We
that
want
terrible?
everybody talking about you.
Exactly.
We want the noise on the good that you're doing.
That's right.
Well, and I think from a perspective, we know that marketing generates revenue, and that's a good thing. So if you're a $1 million organization and you have to invest X percentage to marketing and it keeps you at $1 million, or you're growing minimally, 2, 3, 4%. In the old perspective, that was good.
Yes.
You were kind of doing okay because you didn't have to spend a lot of money to grow the organization. But what if you took a big percentage and marketed, and you grew the organization disproportionately to the money you invested? Oh, I'm sorry, your percentage to the cause changed, but your revenue to the cause doubled.
Right.
And I think that's the perspective that we just get caught up in. And
Yes.
you need somebody who understands business to be able to understand the concept of how to do it properly.
Yes. But we had an organization a few years ago who had a HUD grant. And at the time, HUD was notorious for having maybe a 7% indirect rate, something ridiculous. And they came to this organization and said, you do such a good job in whatever it was they were doing. We'd like to double our investment in you so you could serve twice as many people.
If you cut it to 6?
Well, they didn't dare try that. But what happened instead was we said, you know what, let's run the numbers. This was a certified sustainable candidate, an organization in our program. And we ran the true cost of delivering on that contract. This organization held a golf tournament every year, and they raised about $80,000 to support the lack of funding that HUD grant actually provided to fill the gap for what it is they accomplished that got them kudos in Washington, D.C., and the opportunity to double. And in the end, they had to go back to this program officer and say, no, thank you. We can't afford to double this program because we can't afford to do 2 golf tournaments a year to supplement what you already don't pay for. And
Which
that's
would
the
only
problem.
keep us even and destroy our team, our staff. The energy that goes into these events is immense.
Right. And the program that they want delivered isn't being fully funded as it is. And this, I think, is the other message donors don't understand. Very seldom does the grant-funded program be fully funded by the grant itself. There's a need to supplement it, right? And that's the unrealistic part of running a nonprofit business. If I owned the donut shop and you came in and bought my donut, our relationship would be complete. You would pay for exactly what you wanted.
And if I was running it properly, I would make a little money on the donut.
I would have built the margin, right?
And I'd be okay.
That's right. I maybe left the stale one for you and sold it at – no, I'm just
That's
kidding.
the day-old one.
But
they still work for me, too. The day-old ones are fine.
Yeah.
50% off, I'll do it.
Sure. But instead what happens is this is why the business model is more complex. I have something I offer. I have to sell it to you who will never benefit from it. But I have to sell you, the funder, the idea. Your life will be better if you will help me pay for the behavioral health I'd like to provide to the homeless, mentally ill man that's sitting outside your business. Okay, I convince you to give me the money. Then I go over to the mentally ill young man sitting in front of your business, and I need to convince him to get help. All right, I'm selling again.
Yep.
Right? So I've got a non-direct beneficiary investing. I've got a direct beneficiary uninterested in any investment. And then I've got to bring in the staff and board and volunteer support to deliver whatever it is I said I'm going to deliver for your money.
Right.
And
to
so
the guy who doesn't want it, to the guy who wants it.
Correct.
To the organization that maybe can't afford to do what you just promised.
Exactly. So the selling, the marketing is very labor intensive without an investment to do it. Right? And I don't think people fully appreciate that difficulty.
Oh, I totally concur. I agree with you 100%.
It's phenomenal, the misalignment that exists there. And it is why donors say don't spend more than 10% on indirect costs. A lot of times we'll get opportunities to do things and the grantor, the donor will say, I want to pay for this program, but I don't want to pay for staff. Well, how the hell you think I deliver that program?
Right.
I mean, that ought to be my biggest expense, followed directly by my rent or something, right? That is a typical biggest cost in an organization because we're delivering a mission, which takes human power, right? So it's really not understood well in the donor sector, unfortunately.
We'll continue the conversation with Kim Tucker of the Impact Foundry right after this. I was in the media business for over 35 years and had the great privilege of working with Runyon Saltzman, RSE, Marketing, Advertising, and Public Relations. We collaborated on many different campaigns, but their commitment to the nonprofit sector hasn't changed since their founder, Gene Runyon, started the agency. Over many years and many campaigns, Runyon Saltzman has been committed to improving lives by tackling California's most challenging issues. Guided by research-informed strategies and insightful, creative solutions, RSE develops innovative communications campaigns that raise awareness, educate, and reduce stigma in diverse communities throughout our state and beyond. To learn more about RSE, visit rs-e.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. Let's change gears a little bit. We're talking about marketing.
Don't make me stop complaining, though.
No.
Okay.
You can complain all you want.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I appreciate that because I think this is part that people don't hear often enough. They don't. And the podcast itself, it's what we do. We're helping people tell their stories because they can't do it themselves. And we've heard those. We're one of the best kept secrets. It's like, that's a tragedy because your product, your program, your service is unbelievable. And if more people knew about it, think of how many more people you could help by doing it. Mm-hmm. And therein lies the tragedy, I think. Funding is important all the way around.
Yes.
How is the Impact Foundry funded?
Well, we're disproportionately an earned revenue model. We do book our membership dues, which are quite low for the over 850 organizational members we have today. We book that as contributed revenue. It's a donation to us. It does help fill some gaps in our general operating costs and helps us to be able to show up for our members. But earned revenue in the way of program grants and contracting. We do a lot of nonprofits hire us to facilitate board retreats, to conduct specialized training and engagement in their teams. The grantor, like corporate grant funders, hire us to come in and provide some of that training to their grantees. So we get mostly earned revenue opportunities like that.
So you speak of it as grant, but so it has to go through the grant process? Sometimes,
depending on the funder, right? If you're following the money. If you, as your foundation, were to give us a general operating grant, we would book that as contributed revenue. You've given it to us for whatever choice we have. And, of course, that's the most coveted money. There are very few general operating grants. I would give a shout-out to J.P. Morgan Chase. I think they're one of the best partners in our local region for getting to know organizations and investing in them with general operating grants.
Interesting.
Yeah, but very few do that.
And then the rest, is there a fee for service where you actually just get paid to bring a program?
Absolutely. And that is our earned model, right, is that we would quote a price. I could do a $2,500 to $40,000 engagement in a large nonprofit for a year-long strategic planning effort or something, right? So we balance some of those shorter-term and longer-term projects just for our own capacity. And then there's, fees people pay to take our classes. There's a fee to be in Certified Sustainable. Most of the time, funders pay for that, but out of the couple hundred organizations that have been through it, half a dozen or so have paid the fee themselves.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's grant funded.
How many people represent the Impact Foundry?
Well, we're way down on staff coming through COVID. We had a lot of retirements and relocations through that. We've purposely not staffed back up. We recently engaged with Luminary Partners, which is a woman-owned, diverse woman-owned business to provide management services. So rather than hire staff that sit in the office, we've hired them.
Wonderful.
We do feel like it's an efficient way to scale our programs and to really test the market in some of these new things we're launching in the fall. So we want the flexibility to do that. We still have a partnership with Rabbi David and the Fresher Futures Initiative. We do have a collective impact project on solving hunger in our community that we're happy to partner with him and his different boards on and to provide some back-end support for that. So we do have dollars that pass through us to that program. Otherwise, we've got about 3 FTEs total, maybe,
Full-time,
down from 12.
full-time employees.
And we have about 35 subject matter experts that we call our faculty. So
Okay.
they'd be teaching classes or being warm referrals for project work, or we would partner with them on a project that we keep active as well.
Okay, keyword partner again.
Yeah.
Because the next question, collaboration certainly has been the buzzword. It sounds like impact is the new one.
Hey, they stole that from us.
That's right.
We had that before.
Well, and I love it. I mean, we were talking about that. Even our
I
phrase
should have
is
trademarked it, huh? Darn it. No,
generating impact. Amplifying stories, generating impact. But collaboration is so significant and so important with the multitude of organizations we have here, second only to DC by per capita.
Absolutely. That's right.
Numbers, I've seen numbers like 11, 12, 13,000 nonprofits.
Yes.
Of which, some are nickel and dime, small little, organizations for Little League or whatever it may be.
That's
so
right.
not quite the same, but enough of the larger scale that in some cases they siphon off some of the good that other organizations could do because they silo. And how do we get some of these organizations get to work? You certainly are one of the collaborative because it comes to you. You're a collective. And somebody like a Social Venture Partners, multiple organizations, Impact 100, multiple organizations impacted as a result of what they do. But often, and even many times right here in the studio, we're talking with somebody and it's like, have you talked to? And they look at you like, I don't even know who that is.
Right.
When in fact, not only should you know who, you should be working with them because you're in the same space and you could benefit greatly by doing things together versus alone.
Yes. And I think a little bit of shame on us because we ought to be better at putting that out there. And I think that's certainly on our growth objectives is to communicate some of those stories more effectively and more seriously, right, in our communications to our membership. Beyond that, we have a cultural attitude here in the capital city. We get a rather parochial sometimes. It becomes a who you know town instead of a what you know kind of place. I think new money in San Francisco is very exciting, and it doesn't always translate the same here in Sacramento. So we need to break through some of that parochial attitude. One of the misnomers that is carrying out in the nonprofit space is that we have limited donors, limited dollars, limited support. I don't happen to believe that. I think we have quiet and untapped resources in addition to those that are well known. And we need to stop running our businesses from an attitude of lack, right? And so nonprofits feel that, so we say collaboration. Oftentimes what happens is it's called co-opetition, right? A funder says, you must collaborate to get our money. Okay, for today, I'm going to collaborate for you. But I'm only doing that to get the check.
Right.
As soon as this engagement's over, I'm back to holding all my nuts here, right, around my nest, and I'm not going to share. And we need to stop that. And sometimes we're going to lose when we try it, but we still need to try it. So collaboration has the possibility of doing lots of things we care about at the same time. So could expand our capacity without overtaxing our capabilities, right? I could look at things from a continuum of care model where I might bring that young person in for this part of their journey and pass that young person on to you for the next phase, rather than me try to start a program to meet the next need they have. There's already an organization in town.
It exists, right?
Why don't we have a collective impact model where we have 4 or 5 of us working together, and we could streamline some things. But that requires egos to get out of the way, right? Mm-hmm. It also requires that we build trust between us and among us. And if we layer the DEI concerns of our region on top of that, we've got to stop trying to be all things to all people, because it's racist in its background, it's colonial in its attitude, and it continues to keep us divided, right? There is full agency inside of every community of color in our region. The answers live in the communities that the problems are being seen and experienced, right? Our job, if we don't identify as part of that community of color, is to remove the barriers for their full agency to exist, right? And I mean agency of person as well as of organization. My job is not to go into that community and tell them what their problem is and tell them how to fix it, to be a white savior or any of those other terms you might hear. My job is to get out of the way. So I think at Impact Foundry, so I personally can work on however that can show up for me and be as radical and supportive an ally as people will let me be, and always be willing to say I'm sorry on the process. Beyond that, Impact Foundry needs to highlight the work that is being done in those communities and create the invitation for people to find out more, right? That'd be the number one reason I'd be willing to sit in here and talk to you, right? I mean, I love talking to you. Don't really like hearing my own voice on things, right? So, but I think it is important. We do need to up-level those stories and highlight that impact. And I think Impact Foundry needs to do a better job of telling those stories. So I have that commitment for sure.
And part of that is mixers.
Yeah.
Bring people together.
That was a good party, wasn't it?
Wonderful.
Earlier
It was
this
wonderful.
month. Yeah. That's thanks to the partners that we have, and would not attempt to do that level of good time without them. I know Valley Vision wasn't able to be present that night, but they are an active part of this alliance that we formed last year with social venture partners, with the Sacramento Region Community Foundation, and with Impact Foundry. And just the fact that the 4 of us who lead those organizations are talking every month, that we're sharing what we're thinking about, we're commiserating a little bit. We don't hold pity parties. We don't buy real estate there, but we might share a few things that irritate us. There's been some recent county contracting that didn't go in favorable to the nonprofits. We're pretty upset about that. And it's a reminder that we need to do more to organize ourselves and then to advocate for ourselves. And then what's the unique role that Social Venture Partners brings in with individuals who want to collectivify their dollars in support of something. And their Fast Pitch program is an excellent example of how they are building capacity inside organizations thanks to the help of their members. Mm-hmm. The Sacramento Region Community Foundation has a long-standing history of taking very, very good care of our local philanthropists. And in recent years, I think they've done a really great job in diversifying how they connect to the nonprofit sector too.
And there is one where we get the noise from the marketing investment, public relations investment, Big Day of Giving.
That's right.
I mean, if you don't know when Big Day of Giving is happening, when it's ramping up, I don't know what rock you're under, because
Correct.
It is everywhere. It's omnipresent.
That's right. And it creates a low barrier entry for especially our grassroots organizations to be introduced to new donors, right? It really should be a donor acquisition experience for people. And, kudos to the Region Foundation's past leadership and current leadership, because they did that study about the level of philanthropy in our community and where we were a little bit low on what we could expect from local people. And then they did an initiative to engage them. And then Big Day came out of that. And to me, that's what we want to do, right? We're going to call a problem, great, but we're not going to sit in that space, right? And what we tell nonprofits, especially people on boards all the time, is it's not the qualified that get called, the called get qualified, right? So we're called to do something about that. Let's get the facts And then let's come up with and try, even to the point of failure, some solutions to it, right? So to me, Big Day is a tremendous success for those reasons, right?
And the opportunity to now donate at a lower threshold, to
That's
engage newer donors, people who don't have the means, but they want to participate. Well, everybody can afford, I forget what the minimum number was.
Like a $25 gift or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's accessible to many more people because once they start, it's a feel-good.
Right.
And you want to feel good about your community. You want to say you had a part and a hand in developing it. But Valley Vision as well. So
yes, and then especially since Evan and her team have become the repository for millions of dollars in economic development monies, they're an important player in helping design programs that strengthen communities. So we want them at the table as well.
We have a captive listener here. I would imagine we're probably going to have a lot of nonprofit leadership listening because I want to hear what Kim has to say. If they don't already
you need to get
know,
out more.
right?
Yeah, okay.
If they don't already know, what would you say is the greatest need? What would be the greatest benefit to the Impact Foundry at this point?
You mean from anybody who's listening and has a wallet?
Yes, and so that kind of answers is it just
money is mission? More money is more mission.
Yes,
and this idea that we're in a little bit different position than many of our member organizations. The fruit of our labor grows on other organizations' trees. Right? When their capacity is strengthened and there are fewer children in a system that doesn't serve them or fewer people committing suicide or whatever the issues are, that's great. They get the credit for that. We don't feed people. We feed those who feed people, right? So it's a harder sell from a donor perspective, right? We have a business case to make for sure, and we need to continue to do better on that as well. But on the money is mission piece, we know a couple things. We know that capacity needs to be ever expanding in order for our nonprofits to meet the needs that are ever evolving in our communities. We saw that when COVID hit, right? When food banks were being asked to double and triple who they were serving, right? We know from when, maybe 2010 or so, when the FDIC partnered with United Way here in Sacramento as one of the 10 cities studied for asset poverty. And we know that coming through that, 42% of Sacramento County residents are asset poor, which means they have fewer than 90 days of liquid assets in the event of a catastrophe, an illness, a job loss, or something. We have so many of us living on the margin, right? And if we want to do something about that, we have to fundamentally change how we approach those issues, right? I fully believe that hunger and homelessness, the only reason those are not solved is we don't have the political will to solve it. We know how to make it work. We just need to adequately resource the organizations that are doing it.
And that right there, it's adequately resourced. The resources are there. They are not going where they belong.
But then you've got elected officials at the state level,
will. Right,
who say, well, the reason we don't have answers is we have to put the spotlight on nonprofits and ask them how they're spending their money. Let me tell you, just look at the Sacramento County. 90+% of all behavioral health dollars are outsourced to nonprofits. They are contractually obligated to do things. The reporting is so onerous, I can't believe it.
Right.
We don't need to put a bigger spotlight on us. Put a bigger spotlight on the county. Find out why they're not contracting with the ones that have the best outcomes.
Right.
Don't put it on us. This is what I find insulting and interesting in not a good way, is that our electeds are so transactional in their thinking that the quick answer is put the pressure on the person who delivers the service. No. Once you put the pressure starting at the state level around how you're going to thread the needle between housing and hunger and homelessness and mental health.
Mental health, right.
And figure out something. And frankly, if you don't have the nonprofit leaders of our community at that table telling you what works, then shame on you as an elected or appointed person in our state, right? We know the answers. We just need the opportunity to share them with the people who can make the decisions.
And to your point of homelessness, one of the most popular episodes we have on the network happens to be the Hope Cooperative.
Oh, excellent.
Relative to homelessness.
Too bad it didn't crash the Prop 1 initiative.
Tough, because a lot of nonprofits are feeling the impact of this one.
Well, a lot of us are going to lose us as Impact Foundry, but a lot
Yes.
of us, meaning the community we support,
Right.
are going to have dollars redirected to solve a problem for a very narrow slice of the homeless pie versus the continued investment in the proper mental health and behavioral health services that are required to have people move forward in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an oversimplifying of answers in order to get votes that has unintended consequences. And that's very unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to see the impact of that in our communities.
Yes.
Especially in our nonprofit organizations. Many have come through and lamented some of the challenges they're having as a result of it already.
Yes.
And what it's going to force them or cause them to have to do. So, yeah, truly unfortunate. Now, you have a wonderful event that was pre-COVID called What If?
Yeah.
Which is just a great name. You got some great names. And the if is IF, Impact Foundry.
Correct.
So
you told them the answer already. What are you talking about? No. Yeah, we launched the What If conference in 2016 following the name change, in part because I got a lot of phone calls about what the hell's Impact Foundry? What does that mean? I like the Nonprofit Resource Center. So while we worked with people to transition through change,
yes,
we made the argument and introduced the organization that way in the initial conference. But it was the largest, continued to be the largest California convening of nonprofits, at least Northern California convening of nonprofits. We had over 1,000 people for a day of learning and networking and celebrating. We themed those for the years that we did those leading up through February of 2020. We had nationally renowned speakers come. And the idea here in What If is, what if you had everything you needed to fulfill your mission? What could the world look like? How could we experience it if everything you needed was supplied to you? So there was a professional development. We did over 20 workshops in the day. We tried to speak to some form of innovation with every one of the conferences. We brought this really dynamic group of young people out of Atlanta who had taken, what do they call the Fitbit technology, the near-range technology in a Fitbit, and had developed a tool for working with homeless men in Atlanta to put all their documentation in this bracelet. Because if you're homeless and in an encampment and you get routed during the night, you lose all your stuff. But what if everything you needed was on a bracelet? And then you could actually check into your clinic, you could check in with your PO, whatever the things were, and you could create a record for people who otherwise don't quite fit into the bureaucracy of public treatment opportunities. That was really exciting and it turned out it was a California company that had invested in the technology with them. So, we want to highlight those kind of things. Who's solving problems in an innovative way? We'd love to have them back, actually. They've gone on to get some real recognition and investment in their program. But we want to do that. And we always had massage therapists there giving chair massages, right?
I recall.
Free headshots. Because those are the things that we as nonprofit people don't invest in ourselves. We don't have that margin in our budgets to provide that kind of support. And we want everyone loved on and thanked and celebrated as part of it. So we'd love to bring it back. COVID is the big disruptor. The venue at McClellan closed as a result of COVID. There are very few venues in Sacramento that you can put 1,000 people with a bunch of workshop rooms and a place to enjoy lunch and a happy hour. So we do need to look at how we might do that again. It's being asked for. So
I agree. And I think we're seeing many times that I speak with people in the organizations, the events were decimated with COVID. So anything post-March 2020 to date has maybe now starting to come back. But what we're hearing from the people who are attending is, this is wonderful. It's so great to get back together again. And we're, a year out of it. You kind of forget that, no, people are still getting comfortable with the fact that we're gathering and they're big gatherings.
That's right.
But it looks like it's coming along, and we hear it through all the organizations. We want our events back. We want to get people together, and they seem to be supporting them. The events look like they're doing well. If we see what's online, and we have some auctioneers who are doing a fabulous job of raising big money for organizations, and that money seems to be better than it was pre-COVID. So it's, I think, encouraging. And back to your point of capacity in the community, not for the organization, but the capability of people to give, it's there.
It's totally there.
It's whether they choose to see the cause appropriately because it's been able to tell its story well, and that it's got a proven track record. And that's something we didn't talk about. I do want to bring that up. The results of the organizations. There are many organizations doing good work, but do we really know with tangible evidence and key performance indicator and data that says we're doing good work? Are nonprofits in that space of being able to not only tell the story, but demonstrate factually to a donor that here's where it is, literally here's where it is in so many ways? What are you seeing?
That's an issue. Why Certified Sustainable as a program includes that element, right? It also links with your comments before, one about best kept secret. Like we just put our head down and do our work and we don't always look up and see who else is joining us in this fight, right? Or if we do, we see them as competition instead of a collaborator. And then also the underfunding of the storytelling, right? We don't have the resources. We complete a project or a program or complete our work with that human being and we move to the next one. And we don't pause to celebrate often, and we don't pause to document what took place so we have a compelling story to tell. Those are all things we need to do. I mean, no excuse zone on that. We definitely need to do it. I think that there's a lot of efficacy in the work that nonprofits are doing, especially the ones who know they have those key performance indicators identified. We do training on what those could be for organizations, or at least in the consulting, we would look individually at them. But we all need to have some, right? And we do train on the difference between kind of vanity metrics and things that matter, right? I don't care how many friends you have on Facebook.
We look really good over there. Look at how
yeah,
many,
exactly.
Look at how many,
Let me distract you over here. Yeah, we want them to be meaningful, right?
Yeah.
I think about 5% of the data we collect is meaningful. Let's turn that 5% into something really powerful that attracts people to make an investment. And I think that's back where we need to be is we have a value proposition. We can make our case. We can do it for all the different types of donors and investors we have, from the heartfelt pay it forward to the real business case. And we do need to do both in our pitches and in our reports.
I cannot thank you enough for making the time to come speak with me today. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit significantly from what you said. There's key points there. And jump on the bandwagon, too, for some of the necessary moves that have to be made in the nonprofit community. But the significance of what you're doing, what the Impact Foundry provides to nonprofits, there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. And we need that resource. So thank you for that. And I mentioned in the introduction, one of Sacramento's most admired CEOs for very good reason. I think this conversation...
They're not discerning in their process? Is that what you're getting at, Jeff?
No, you did a good job of fooling them, Kim. But you are such a wealth of knowledge. You are so committed to the nonprofit community and the people in the greater region. And, it's not just about the organizations. It's about the people that not only run them, but the recipients, the beneficiaries of those organizations. So, what a wonderful discussion, but more importantly, what a wonderful person you are for your deep care and consideration, because that's what makes the difference.
Well, thank you. I do think that there's a reason to get up every day and do this work. I think we have some of the most dynamic hometown heroes that people just don't know about. Organizational leaders that are doing some things that I think would blow the donors' minds if they understood it, right? We do need a better way to tell that story. It's also why, coming through COVID, we've started an advocacy vertical within the organization to mirror up against Certified Sustainable and the Cultural Intelligence Unit. We must be advocating for the role that nonprofits play in our region. When you do consider how much of COVID's recovery dollars were in the hands of nonprofits to try to put Band-Aids on or prevent something worse from happening, we are relied on, right? The nonprofits do what business and government can't or won't. And we are not adequately resourced to respond when called upon. Something in there has to change. So I'm hoping in this next year that our advocacy efforts begin to bear some fruit on that question. So stay tuned. We'll do a part 2.
Oh, I think so. I think so. And we do collaborate with you so much. You are integral for what we do. And, without the blended knowledge of all these assets that we've got, we can't do it. Like you, I'm just a conduit.
Well, I think like us, you're a broker for good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's key is each of us should ask ourselves, where have we brokered some good in the day? It could be in our own organization, could be in our own family and to our neighbor. But wherever it is, I think that's Impact Foundry's role. We need to broker that good. You have a need and you have a skill, then we'll put you two together, right? You're doing it by telling these stories, right? Because you're going to broker relationships that you haven't even begun to quantify, right? And people from this market and other markets are hearing these things. We need to come together. And I do think the solution exists.
Yeah.
We just need the right people at the table.
Well, we are here to help.
Right on. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. If you have a need for the services or products our sponsors offer, please reach out to them. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations, creating integrated communications committed to improving lives. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is a production of, is recorded at, and edited by Hear Me Now Studio.